So we'll call the meeting to order at 6:45. Sorry for our technical difficulties. And we have no public audience tonight. So we're going to move on to board and administrative communications. So Sharon, if you would start us off, please.
So this week I'd like to just briefly talk about our, we came together, as part of the Equity Council, and the timing of it couldn't have been really more perfect for us all to come together. And I'm going to defer to Sue for most of the report, but I wanted to be able to share that we did take a moment to recognize, the events of the week, and just really, I want to say the events of the week, but really the culmination of everything that happened with COVID, throughout the country, and then, what we all know to have happened around George Floyd. But it was really good for them to give us a moment to come together as a group. So what they did was they allowed all the Black minorities as part of the Equity Council to just come together as one community, which was just absolutely worth it. And I want to say worth it more so for me in the sense that had we all even been at work in our workplaces, I think that what we would have done even in the office is all come together in conference rooms just to kind of, relieve and just talk. And so I'm really thankful that that we were allowed that time. And I think everybody else was as well. And so, like I said, I'm going to defer to Sue to give an update on where we are with the council. I will say, as she's going to share, we're needing to move along a little bit. I think it's taken us a year to get to where we are, and we've got so much more that we need to do. And so I think after, what she shares, you'll hear and see that we're going to hopefully quickly go into drive mode so that we can really get some things in place. And so I'll leave that for equity. And then the other thing that I wanted to really share is, for the board and those who have reached out to me, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for the support, grateful for the opportunity to talk. And I'm trying not to get emotional here, but I just want to just say group hug, and I really, really, really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. We are a community that cares. And so a lot of the things that are going on outside of our community, and we know we're not perfect, but I know that we're trying to do good. And there's a lot of good in the community. And I think that even on the other side of this, the good will rise to the top, and I think that's what we just all need to remember. All right. So I'll stop there so I don't get too emotional, but thank you for giving me a moment to just share.
Thank you, Sharon. You've been very gracious in letting us all reach out to you, and we do. I know I appreciate it greatly, and you have amazing strength, and it comes through in such great ways. So thank you for all you're doing to help us move this forward. Sue, I'll leave it to you.
Terrific. So we, as Sharon had said, we had our last Equity Council meeting already planned for June 4th. So even prior, again, we collaborate with the Center for School Change. And as we were thinking about the facilitation of that meeting, we had a plan in place, and then the racial unrest across the nation happens, which culminated in Mr. Floyd's death. So we came back together and said what we initially had planned just wasn't going to do justice. So we got together in those, what they're called affinity groups, and just checked in with each other and how are we doing? And this is work that we are all very passionate about, no matter what lens we are coming to that work from and through. And then we sat and we action planned next steps over the coming weeks, action planned for the fall. And we created a list of potential opportunities to get off the ground and get moving, and to share and communicate to a larger audience our beliefs around equity here in the Simsbury Public Schools. So to that end, at our next Board of Education meeting on June 23rd, I will be updating the board. I've mentioned prior that the Equity Council has taken quite some time to put together an equity statement that has a definition of what we believe equity to be in the Simsbury Public Schools, our core beliefs, and our stance, the actions that we believe we need to take in order to actualize equity here in Simsbury. So I will be sharing that document with you ahead of time, and then there will be a moment, more than a moment, many moments for you to discuss that, ask questions, provide feedback, and eventually we would look at to the board to adopt that statement and use that as the foundation for policies and practices of equity moving forward. The Equity Council is also, it was a resounding yes that they want to continue to get together this summer. That was not our initial plan, and really put into place some of those next steps in looking at some data, some culture data, some access data, disaggregated and aggregated in different ways, so we can use that to ask the right questions and inform, again, future practices and policies. So certainly more detail at the next Board of Education meeting, but please feel free to reach out to either Sharon or myself if you have any questions.
Okay, she has the 2 boxes there, just don't forget them.
Thanks so much, Sue. I appreciate that. The work is timely and necessary, and to all our volunteers in that group, a great thanks from all of us here on the board. You're really helping to improve our community in huge ways, and we appreciate that. Okay, Mr. Tyndall.
Oh, I'm sorry, Susan. I was remiss. One element, I wanted to share that Spirit Council is also going to be meeting on June 25th. My apologies for not mentioning that. This was not a regularly scheduled meeting. They had one in May that they needed to postpone. They will be meeting on June 25th as well. And the Board of Selectmen approved for the Spirit Council to have a Facebook page. So that is up and running since last evening. So please check that out if you have a moment to do so.
Yeah, that Spirit Council is a very important piece of the puzzle. Sharon, do you want to add to that?
Only one more thing. So in the same vein, at the Board of Selectmen meeting last night, I happened to join in, and they have, much like we have the walk on Iron Horse, they have been talking about designing or creating a banner. And so there's going to be a communication, I think, that's going to be sent to the town, much like they did with the walk, and identifying what that wording should be. Should it be something, and I'll just give an example, like, Simsbury stands up, or, no hate in Simsbury. So it'll be something like that, but they're going to look for the town to kind of chime in about that. Okay, so I just wanted to share that.
Great, thank you very much. Now, Mr. Tyndall.
I'm not sure how I segue out of that, other than say thank you to the team. That the work you're doing is so critical, and I thank you. I have my utmost respect for what you're doing. Just on a really lighthearted note, number one, I just want to take a second and say congratulations on making it through another school year. Talk about it being a long year, and I just wanted to commend everybody. And then secondly, real briefly, I had just the real pleasure of watching the Henry James talent show today. And my gosh, you guys have got to watch this. These 7th and 8th graders unequivocally have more talent than I have ever had when I was their age or now. So great. Just a great job by all the performers, and really would just encourage everybody it's 20 minutes incredibly well spent.
Great. Thank you very much. Lydia.
Yes, so thank you, Sharon and Sue, for all the work that you've been doing on the with equity, and that just segues me to what we've had in the past 2 weeks on the national front, talking to colleagues all around the country, and especially in some of the cities and just all four corners of the country, including Alaska and Virgin Islands. And so all the work that they are doing within their states and what we're doing within our state may be small, but the work that we're doing is very, very powerful as we're continuing on the equity front. So that has been, for the past 2 weeks, that has been a very invigorating conversation, a hard conversation for some, but it has been a conversation that we are pursuing further. So that's what's been going on there. Again, with Crack and Cave, this is, again, another conversation that we've been having around the board tables, that how it affects our districts here in Connecticut, and, as we end the school year and begin the new school year. So that's what's been going on. Again, just, calls with the commissioner, meetings with the commissioner in terms of this ending the school year, summer school, and returning to the school year in the fall. So that's where we are.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Sorry, there we go, Tara.
Now I'm muted. Okay, so I would like to say, the Equity Council is such an amazing group of people. We have so many community members and teachers, and it's so inspiring, and there's so much hope. And students, I mean, it's such a great, you are in this group of people, and Zoom hasn't taken any of that passion and that hope away, which is really nice to know and see. And I'm looking forward to it next fall. And I think a lot of the work they're doing there's just a lot of great ideas that make, any marginalized group heard, and a place for everyone to feel a great foundation for us to start and keep moving forward on. Secondly, I'd like to really thank and congratulate our seniors. We had our senior Josh and our senior Kayla and student representatives, and they were great. And I'm sorry we didn't get to see more of them this year. It's a disappointment, but they are great things ahead for both of them. And I want to congratulate the whole class of 2020. They've had a run like no one has before, and they're headed out on Friday, and it'll be great.
That's great.
I'd say that there is a parade. We mentioned it earlier if you didn't hear it, but there's going to be a parade going from Henry James down Owensbrook, and they're hoping that people will be on Iron Horse Boulevard at 5 o'clock on Thursday, socially distanced, to cheer our seniors on. They'll drive through, and hopefully they'll decorate their cars and be all excited about it. And then on Friday, they will be starting at 6:45. Everyone on Farms Village Road should know that there's going to be a lot of traffic on West Street and Farms Village as the kids come to the high school, the families, 1 car per family, pulling into the high school, starting at 6:45 on Friday. The event should probably start around 8 and last an hour and a half or 2 hours. You can listen to it on our station, our Fireman Station 103.5, and it will be on the Simsbury Community Television the following day, shortly thereafter. I don't think there's enough to have it be live streamed, but I know they're going to try. But so it's going to be exciting. If nothing else, it's going to be very exciting. And these kids are fabulous. And it's amazing how they've rallied and they've just adjusted and gotten it done. And they're doing it. So it's very exciting.
It's the most historic class of Simsbury High. They are going to be remembered for a long time.
They aren't going to forget it either.
Jen.
Can't hear me? I wanted to, I only wanted to say that I had gone to the protest, the rally, I guess, on Friday. And I believe, I'm almost positive, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but those were seniors that helped coordinate that whole thing, which is pretty amazing. I was so impressed with the speakers, with the tone, the message. I thought it was really inspiring, and to know that came from, Simsbury High School students, I think is, a shout out to all of them for doing what they did.
Absolutely. It was, if you didn't get a chance to go, Tara did post a YouTube video that kind of gives you a peek at it, but it was so very well done and so respectful. And and so poignant. It has stayed with me since I was there on Friday. It has really stayed with me. So kudos to them for really putting together such a powerful event. Mr. Watson.
Oh, so I'll keep it quick. Just wanted to say, you know, we made it through the last 3 months, obviously with the distance learning and with COVID, and obviously it's still going on, but just a big thank you to the administrators, the teachers, the parents, obviously, and the students for hanging in there. Pretty much done now. And I can speak as a parent, you know, it was certainly not perfect, but overall I was pretty impressed with how we went about it. And, you know, now we can kind of unwind for the summer and, you know, look forward to the fall. So just a big thank you to everyone for all of their efforts and over the last 3 months, because it was a huge uplifting, you know, effort on everyone's part. So thank you.
Totally agree there. Mr. Burek.
Okay, there's not a lot for me to add to what all the amazing things everyone said. I just will add one thing about the Equity Council and how proud I am about Simsbury and the work that people are doing on this Equity Council. We go back, you know, a while to the formation of it, and it really is something that I am proud that people can look to Simsbury and the work that's being done as a model for other places. And the fact that this Equity Council was in place and the conversations were already happening before the last couple of weeks shows you know where we are. And it also, as Sharon said, it's an excellent forum to continue conversation. So I'm very proud of the town and all the work that everybody is doing on that.
Agreed. Thank you. Ms. Lemke.
The only thing I wanted to add is that we continue to plan for extended school year services for our students with special needs. We are planning by and large for a distance learning format, and looking with Mr. Sullivan on the many stipulations that we would have around health and safety. We are going to try to bring in smaller groups of students for face-to-face instruction. Certainly that can't start until after July 6th. There's a lot of components that go into it, from screenings to materials and personal protective devices and staffing. But we are working hard to do so, and we'll update you with any additional outcomes.
Great, thank you. Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, I just thought it was appropriate to take a minute tonight. The board always sees our retirees through the motions on the certified side, but not always on the non-certified side. And I wanted to point out that during the period of this COVID closure, we had 2 retirements from the main office team at Squadron Line School, in that both Deb Pinkham and Donna Richardson have put in their retirements and will not be back with us, not the way that either one of them wanted to close out, but they have been a team in the Squadron Line office for over a decade now, back to when my own children were shining at Squadron Line. And for them to go out together with the retirement, just wanted to take a moment because I know they are much appreciated in the Squadron Line community. So congratulations to both Deb Pinkham and Donna Richardson. They are already retired and enjoying their time.
Well, my Donna Richardson, I said it. I was a parent at Squadron Line for 14 years, and she was the only one who was there the entire time in that office that I was there. And so when I left, I gave Donna flowers. So they both did such a lion's share of the work there, and it was always so comforting to see their faces in the main office. So congratulations and much thanks to both of them. And now Mr. Curtis is not with us tonight due to unforeseen circumstances, so Mrs. Murray is stepping into his shoes for us this evening.
Yes, thank you. I just want to echo everything that everybody mentioned, regarding the Equity Council, the car parade, and graduation on Friday night. It's amazing we're at this point, and thank you for those comments. In my role, though, as assistant superintendent, I did want to let the board know that I have been collaborating with about a dozen other assistant superintendents in the greater Hartford area. And we've had 2 or 3 meetings so far where we have the opportunity to talk about the work that we're doing, share with one another. I gather ideas, they gather ideas from what we've done. So it's been very helpful, the dialogue that we've had together. We have another meeting scheduled in 2 weeks. We're all very anxious, obviously, trying to get more information from the state so that we have those guidelines in order to plan for the teaching and learning that's coming forward. But I'm just very fortunate to be part of this group of assistant superintendents that are willing to sit together on a Friday afternoon for 2 hours and share the work that we're doing for students in our district. So just wanted to let you know about that.
Great. Thank you so much for being part of that. And sure it gives everybody, some comfort to know that everybody's collaborating everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we're on to recommended actions, and I need a motion on the approval of minutes from May 26, 2020, please.
So moved.
And a second, please.
Second.
Any changes, discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, carries. Personnel.
Yeah, I had a phone conversation a couple of weeks ago with our longtime tech ed teacher, Kurt Dugan, one of our absolute best in the school district. Did 20 years with us here in Simsbury, and many, many years before that. I first met Kurt when I was doing my administrative internship at Canton Junior Senior High School, and Kurt and I would do cafeteria duty together, and had the chance to maybe steal him over here to Simsbury after I landed. So Kurt's a tremendous teacher in a really important area where he makes some of the most long-lasting connections with kids that I've seen. In addition to his manufacturing enterprise that he's essentially taught kids how to run a small business, he's also taught the capstone for our Project Lead the Way engineering class, been involved with the first robotics program. And many of you will remember that just 2 years ago, Kurt was selected by his peers as Simsbury's 2018 Teacher of the Year. So a big loss in our technology education department, but it's a well-deserved retirement for Kurt. And that you'll see the motion that I need you to make tonight to be able to send Kurt into a happy retirement.
I almost hate to ask for this motion because Mr. Dugan has had a big impact in my house as well with my kids, so much appreciation there. But would someone like to move Mr. Dugan's retirement?
I regretfully move that the Board of Education accept the retirement of Kurt Dugan effective July 1st, 2020.
A second. Any discussion?
Huge loss. Good luck to him. We are so lucky to have had him for the years we had him.
Yeah, agreed. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Dugan. Okay, so Todd, you want to take the next item, which is unaffiliated salary adjustments.
I will. So every year we have a group of it's a miscellaneous set of employees that are not part of any bargaining group. They're called the unaffiliated group because they don't have that affiliation. It's comprised of about 45 or so folks, central office staff, security guards, academic support, and since they're not part of a bargaining group, we don't have a union contract or anything like that we negotiate with. This year, the board is recommending an average annual salary for this group of 2.1%. So this is an annual increase, and I would ask the board to make the motion to accept this. Or
I'll
I
move
can-
that. You want
Okay.
to move it?
I don't know.
Sorry, I was muted. So Jeff,
Yeah.
you're moving it, and I know.
Yes, I'll move that the salary range for the unaffiliated Board of Education employees be increased by an average of 2.1% for the 2020-21 fiscal year, with individual position increases being determined by the superintendent of schools.
And can I get a second, please?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you all very much. And thank you, Todd, for taking that charge on that. Purchasing policy.
Yeah, you'll recall that we decided not to move forward with very many policies this spring because of the COVID closure, but this was one that was timely because the changes that we made in this policy were part of the last audit report. So just in terms of process, this went through the policy committee and an online back and forth. We presented it to you 2 weeks ago tonight. I did not receive any communication from board members about it. So I think it is ready to be adopted tonight.
Great, thank you very much. Can I get a motion on this, please?
I'll move to adopt the revised Board of Ed purchasing policies as noted, effective June 9th, 2020.
A
And a
second,
second?
Sharon.
Sharon and Todd, okay, so, any discussion on the policies? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you all very much. And now on to textbook approval.
So 2 weeks ago, I presented to you the book Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. It will be used in our English 12 class, and it will start this fall. I have not received any communication or feedback. Therefore, I would ask the Board of Ed for approval of this text.
Can I get a motion on the textbook, please?
I will, Sharon. I move that the board approve the textbook adoption for the 2021 school year as submitted by the administration.
And a second, please?
I'll second.
Any discussion? I would like to just say it's on my Audible, so I'm looking
Yes.
over the summer.
It's a great book.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, so now we are on to task force updates.
So we'll start with Neil tonight, and I'll follow up with the teaching and learning aspect.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great. So as our communications that have gone out to both staff and students have talked about, we're taking an approach to thinking about the reopening of the Simsbury Public Schools when that happens in a two-committee format. And the group that I'm working with, which we're calling the Return to Simsbury Schools Task Force, is really looking at all the operational and safety challenges that are going to be associated with any kind of reopening of public schools, specifically targeting August. What we're doing is coordinating efforts between key department leaders, and I'm going to go through the membership of the team, which will, I think, allow you to very much understand their work and how they are going to support building administrators in eventually opening up the Simsbury Public Schools. Our task force is also comprised of important special programs and representatives from different groups. Certainly, I think we want to get some good communication out this summer as the work of this group goes from planning to like real decisions. Right now, we are continuing to await guidance from the state. So what I'm going to present tonight is not an answer of what opening is going to look like. It's far from an answer, but I think it is a presentation about the structures of how we're going to get to the answer about school reopening. And I just think we've created a good organizational tool to accomplish a lot of significant work that's going to have to happen over the course of the second half of June and then July and August. I will note that our superintendent was quite proactive in getting this going, maybe more so than I would have liked, because he was probably on me in about April saying, are we thinking yet about reopening? And I was able to push him off for a few weeks before he said to me, I know you're thinking about that, but I'm hoping that we can get together for a face-to-face meeting if we socially distance and really talk about that. So I had no more choice but to really get serious about it as we met up at the Board of Ed, sitting about 20 feet apart in the conference room. By the time we got to early May, we had already formed a structure for this team. You should know that long past that time, the commissioner has now required that such a team be formed in every school district. So we were well ahead of the game in terms of forming this kind of task force. Word got out that we had already formed the task force, and I will say that some of the other districts that have their structures, I'm just saying that imitation is the greatest form of flattery, because they look a lot like ours now after they got going. So I think the best thing to do is probably show you the membership, and that'll help you to understand the structure of what we do. I actually formulated the meeting structure of this team around the Public Safety Committee that the Board of Selectmen runs. What we do with each meeting is the expectation is that these departmental leaders are doing what they need to do between meetings. And then we do a roll call reporting where people can take a 5-minute update to tell us what they've been working on for the past couple of weeks, be able to answer questions from other people about what they've been doing, and just understand the coordination of what needs to happen between these departments. So right now, these operational members of the team, I would say, are kind of the heart and soul right now. And I'll start with the first couple that are really in the forefront of really just being able to procure those supplies that we know we're going to need. So that, of course, starts with health services and our Director of Health Services, Sue Beardsley, a tremendous effort out there to procure all the PPE, from the masks to the face shields, infrared thermometers, gowns, everything you're going to need to be able to open a school in any way in the fall. You know, the expectation will be that families and staff can provide, if they are comfortable with their own mask that they are wearing around now, that is fine, that they can wear that to school. But of course, we will need to be able to supply that for anybody who would not have it. In addition, there are processes that have to be organized around health screenings that will have to happen for people entering the schools, and we've started the planning around that. When you turn to maintenance and custodial, Andy O'Brien, our Director of Operations, the other two folks you see there, Louis Moquette is our senior custodian at Simsbury High School, and Rodney Kraft is our senior custodian at Squadron Line School. So we wanted representation from both groups. Right now, they have been procuring, we have bought new sanitizing machines. You may have seen things like this on the news. They're like electrostatic sanitizing machines that allow you to kind of spray a desanitizing mist. We've been able to procure those for delivery in August. Andy O'Brien is buying a hand sanitizer. If you're having trouble finding it at CVS, we are ordering it in 55-gallon drums. So there's going to be a whole lot of hand sanitizer available in the Simsbury Public Schools. That order has already been placed. And in addition, establishing cleaning protocols and cleaning logs that are going to be a requirement of anything to open schools back up. You'll see our next area where J.R. Salter is working with our task force is transportation. Obviously, the summer school guidelines are all that we've seen right now with regard to transportation. They're pretty restrictive about the number of kids that you could put on a bus. If those are what stand for opening the school year, it will be a real challenge to run a bus system that looks anything like, they're asking you to put kids in every other seat on each side of the bus. It gets you to about 12 kids that could be on a full-size bus. And so our belief being that those requirements may need to be relaxed to have any kind of ability to transport the number of students that would need to be transported. Although a big part of the guidance is that a concerted effort to ask parents to transport students themselves where possible. And that is another thing we'll have to be planning for. Not surprising that a lot of the planning is around technology. We firmly believe that there could still be some distance learning in the fall. And Jason Casey and the technology department has been able to procure something like 800 additional Chromebooks. They're looking at the hotspots for students who have Wi-Fi access issues, and in addition, looking at the bandwidth so that there could be additional opportunities to deliver classrooms out to kids who are at home while that class is being delivered in school. Because a lot of what the planning around this talks about is the potential of a hybrid model where some kids come to school, especially at the secondary level, for a couple of days a week, and other kids stay home, and then you just kind of switch that up. So technology could play a really important role, as it already has for the past 3 months. Kira Sheehan, our accountant, has been a key member of the team tracking all the finances related to COVID-19 expenses that we've already incurred and that we continue to incur in terms of potential reimbursement down the road. Obviously, Mark Kritz, our new director of security, has got a lot to plan in terms of just what the protocols are going to be around student drop-offs and parent pickups, and how do you organize health screenings for kids who need to get into the school and do it in a socially distanced manner. There's all sorts of requirements about signage that needs to go up in schools. And it's a great logistical challenge that Mark has the skill set to meet. So we're happy to have him on our team. We've just recently added Lori Lascarbo from Nutrition Services. It's pretty clear that typical cafeteria service is not how you would operate when schools reopen. In other places, other countries that have already reopened, we've seen students who eat in their classrooms in order not to mix with other students in the population. It could look like something where older students have a grab and go and sit outside during certain days of the year. And Lori and her cafeteria managers have already started brainstorming solutions around what that might look like. My partner, Cindy Freelinger, joins the team as I facilitate the meetings. She represents us in human resources. As you can imagine, there are going to be a lot of significant human resources challenges simply in terms of employees who may not be able to return to work, either due to their age or to underlying conditions, and how do we try to accommodate them, perhaps from a telework environment, and keep them engaged in the work of the Simsbury Public Schools. There may be employees who need to be utilized in slightly different roles than the ones that they left in March, and a lot of planning going into that. And what we've been working on most recently is return to work protocols. It is our plan to open the central office of the Simsbury Public Schools again on June 22nd, and the main offices at our schools on June 22nd. So there's been a lot of work going into the return to work protocols just to get that summer staff up and running. And then lastly, on this set of task force members, Sue Lumke leading the efforts around both mental health supports and student outreach. We know that when we bring both staff and students to school, there's going to need to be a lot of attention to the social emotional learning aspects of kids returning to an environment, talking about what that environment looks like, what we need to do to keep each other safe, and a lot of planning around that. And while we've done very well engaging students through our distance learning environment, there are kids who have been harder to engage and families that have been harder to engage. And we also know, just like I spoke of the staff that may not be able to return due to underlying conditions, we have medically fragile students that are unlikely to return to school, and even if we open, and will need supports in another way. So as I said, this right now, these leaders that you see on this slide are the core members of the team that have done the early work on this. I'll go to the next slide and just show you who the building-based administrators are. It's our principals, obviously, at Simsbury High and Henry James. At the elementary, Mike Luzetti from Latimer Lane, and our assistant principal from Squadron Line, Jacqueline Petrella, volunteered to be part of the team to help think all of this through. And then starting with our second meeting of the task force, Margie Williamson, the principal of St. Mary's School, asked to join, and we were happy to have her. I would characterize right now, these folks have so much on their plate to close up the current school year that the rest of the task force has been engaged in some of that activity of procuring supplies, planning, and I think that as we get the guidance from the state about what K-12 schooling should look like, that these building administrators will kick into high gear starting in late June. One other slide to show you who the members are. We did add a few really key special programs. Obviously, a big part of our operation is the preschool program, 6 rooms at Squadron Line that are dedicated to preschool. Nikki Mahan, who presented to you earlier in the year. Nikki may have the greatest challenge of anybody on these slides, is how do you explain to 3- and 4-year-olds how to stay 6 feet apart and to stay in your seat and wash your hands and do all those important safety exercises. And in addition, we have to figure out what our before and after school extended care might look like. On sports and activities, our athletic director, Jeff Pinney, believe it or not, while the state has not put out a whole lot of guidance about exactly what K-12 schooling will look like, the CIAC has put out some pretty good guidance for athletic directors about trying to get sports up and running. That will start with some allowed outdoor conditioning as of July 6th. So if you see both young men and women who are in a conditioning program out on the back fields at Simsbury High School in groups of 10 and 6 feet apart and getting their bodies back in condition, that's all been approved by the CIAC. So we're excited to maybe get something running there for kids who have time to be able to do some of those things. And then we've invited Jane Allen Peregrine onto the team. The historic graduating class of 2020 is, we're interested to track whether they have the ability to attend college in person. Did their plans change? We're hearing the possibility lots of families may consider a gap year. And what does that look like for our Simsbury families if they decide to do that? And in addition, to really closely track the current juniors turning seniors, because they have not been able to experience any of the typical milestones of none of them have taken SATs or ACTs yet. Those have all been canceled. They have not been able to do traditional college tours and won't be able to do those this summer. So how do we engage that class in certainly the college process, but I would speak about it in terms of post-secondary planning overall, whether that looks like community college, an enrollment in the military, or a direct pipeline to the workforce. And then the final group you'll see is really more representatives. We wanted the president of our teachers union, Jamie Sipa, on the group. He is able to pass along key feedback from the CEA, the state organization for teachers. SFEP is our organization for secretaries and paras, and Susan Healy in Simsbury High School volunteered to be part of the group. And then we selected one elementary parent, Jenna Caulfield from Latimer Lane, and Shauna Basine from Simsbury High School, who serves as the SPTC president, who have been able to share some of the questions that are on parents' minds, understanding that we don't have a lot of answers. So before I take your questions, there's just one more slide to talk about here. And you'll see what we've had 3 meetings so far. You can see on the bottom, we met on May 11th, 27th, and just yesterday on June 8th. And we will meet every 2 weeks into the beginning of the summer. And then I picture this group convening weekly as we really ramp up. What we've been able to do is review the state guide and the CDC guidelines that we have to understand what will likely need to be in place. I've done a lot of reading about what's happened internationally. There are many countries in Europe that have already opened their schools, many countries in Asia that have opened their schools. Nobody has done it exactly the same way. Interestingly, if you look to Denmark, they were one of the first countries to open. Their entire concentration was on the very youngest kids to get the kindergarten, first and second grade students back into the building because the distance learning worked the least well from them. Whereas other countries chose older kids to bring in first. I think one lesson from all the reading I've done about that would tell you that I haven't seen anybody who tried the magic trick of opening 13 grades at once, that there is definitely like a staggered approach to how people in other places are approaching this problem. I already spoke about our early work on procuring supplies. All of those things are in the pipeline to be delivered to Simsbury, and some of it already has. As Sue Lemke spoke about in communications, we have planned very small summer reopening. On June 22nd, our offices will reopen. Central office will reopen on a staggered schedule. Right now, the guidance from about opening as offices is that you should bring them back at 50% capacity. So we have assigned members of central office to A days and B days. And on your day, whichever team you're assigned on, you'll report to the office to work. And on other days, you'll continue to work from home so that not all employees will be in the office setting at the same time to start. And that'll work similarly in our school offices. And then the other thing is that limited opening of summer school. And then otherwise, I would say our work is to support each other with vexing problems, talking about the challenges that we know we're going to face, and to share perspectives of what we're hearing from other places. So it's a large team, a robust team, and I think we're doing some of the really most important work we'll do in our careers to be able to find a way to reopen schools again when the time comes. So I'm going to leave it there. And I'm sure there'll be at least 1 or 2 questions from board members.
Hey, Neil, this is Todd. I have 2 questions. One of them is just curiosity about the CIAC. They came out with guidelines, but the state hasn't really given opinions yet. Can the state say something that will make the CIAC change their plans?
Yeah, certainly they can. I think what the CIAC put out for the first month, which covers July 6th to August 4th, I want to say, is pretty safely within the guidelines. Because what the first month calls for is you can bring kids in, no more than 10 kids in a group with 1 adult. You can't mix the groups of 10, and all activities need to be outside.
Okay.
And I think they're pretty safe on that. The guidelines call for a cap of 3 sessions per week for an hour. And that's what we're planning with Mr. Pinney and our strength and conditioning coach, Tyler English, is going to set up sessions where kids can come get an hour workout in 3 times a week, and be able to be picked up and brought home, so that we don't have kids overlapping in the way we're going to structure it. But yes, after the first 30 days, it can definitely change. The governor can say we're not ready to move to the next phase.
Okay, thanks. My second question is, with the offices opening on June 22nd, you explained how you've got different kind of teams coming in. Do people have the ability to kind of opt out of coming back yet if they're not comfortable?
They do. They need to reach out to Cindy and I in Human Resources and talk about whether they feel it's due to an underlying condition, or perhaps being in a risk group due to age. We are reassuring people. We've put out we're putting out a very significant 5-page memo to talk about all the safety standards that we've put in place. And specifically with central office, about 3 weeks ago, I had an individual conversation with every single employee in central office about their own comfort level in coming back. And I asked principals to do that same thing with their summer employees. So they are allowed to reach out to Human Resources and have that conversation with us. Absolutely.
Great, thanks. That's great to hear. Thanks. That's all I have. Thank you.
Hey, Neil, it's Jeff. Just a similar question from a parent side. What if a parent is just not ready? If they're just not ready, fall comes around and they are really concerned about having their student back in the building. Are we making plans for that kind of scenario?
Yeah, we picture a communication probably in July that goes out to families to say, if you are not comfortable sending your student and you would like your student to continue in a distance learning mode, you need to let us know that, because we might be able to take groups of teachers that are unable to come back and actually match them with students and families that are not comfortable sending them back, and create almost like a separate distance learning team, if you will, that will continue to operate in that mode. We certainly, I don't want to share the community, but there is a different community that's right now put out an anonymous survey to parents, and their feedback was 30% of parents said they are not comfortable sending students back in the fall, which was a higher number than we had expected. So if it looks anything like that number, we're going to have to plan a distance learning approach for that set of students.
Thanks.
So Neil, that kind of goes into my question was, one, have we even, have we identified timeframes in which we might survey our parents, like an earlier and then a later as you're working through, and maybe that's something that Erin is going to do. I'm not sure. So that's one. And then two, as you guys are talking, and I know you've been reading, and probably a lot of us have been, I know I have been, has there been any thoughts, and again, it may be too early, around whether or not we would consider, maybe a 1 through 6 or and maybe have the high school, because they're equipped and they could work from home, and maybe have the teachers come in or something like that. I mean, have you all started at least trying to think about some? And I know that you'll flesh them out as time.
Yeah. The survey part first, we've already, Erin can talk a little bit about the survey she already did related to distance learning experience from the spring and what we learned about that. The survey that our group would put out is not so much an anonymous survey as literally a questionnaire identifying your family and are you planning to send your kid back? Like it's very much like a much more documented questionnaire than so much of a survey. In terms of the other piece, yes, I think when we get the guidance from the state, the early speculation is certainly that we're going to get direction that the most important group to get into schools for in-person instruction is the youngest kids. And I do think you'll see an emphasis on get your youngest students in to the greatest extent possible for, probably full-time in-person instruction, and perhaps for older kids, a hybrid model where they come to school some days and not others. But you also could say, all right, at the high school level, while we figure some of this other stuff out, we're going to start the first 6 weeks in distance learning mode. And I could see that as a possibility as well.
Yeah.
But our hope is that the guidance comes from the governor and the commissioner by the end of this month. That's what we're being told, that it should be coming from be issued by the end of June, so that we do have July and August to plan accordingly.
Thank you.
A lot of work. Great to see. I feel a lot more comfortable having heard all of the details. Thank you very much, Neil, and the team that you have set up. I really appreciate it.
And Neil?
Yes.
Just one quick question. Has there been any talk about starting school earlier to try to get days under our belt, like assuming there might be a spike, whatever, in the fall? I've heard some discussion about that in other schools.
Yeah, I think that's becoming a really popular thing with the colleges right now. I will say, I should have said that in my presentation. One thing that gives me optimism is that the latest word from colleges, residential colleges, is that they're pretty aggressively saying we're going to bring kids back, which is interesting. The model for them has been to start earlier, like start a week or two earlier, because their residential colleges have kids go through Thanksgiving and then not go back to campus, either take their finals from home or be done with the semester at Thanksgiving. For us to change the calendar at this point would require us in very short order to be talking to our teachers union and other unions about expectations. The work year is pretty defined in our contracts. So we would have to know very early in the summer if there was going to be any ability to come back earlier than possible. And right now I haven't heard that out there. And there would be definitely significant work to reopen contracts and talk about that.
But Neil, on that same question, are the union, are they at the table? Because they see what's going on just like we do, and there's so much uncertainty that I just have wondered, have they offered any solutions that would imply, being open to, some changes? Because, this is new for everybody in the country across all states. You know what I mean?
Right. So I know for sure that on the commissioner's task force on this, at the state level, the CEA, the Connecticut Education Association, is definitely represented on that group. They put out a survey to all of their membership, and our president, Jamie Sipa of the Simsbury Education Association, is Right now, Matt Curtis and I meet with our union presidents every single Thursday afternoon throughout the COVID closure, and we're in good communication with them. But I think until we get guidelines, there's no real ask yet about what's out there.
No ask and no volunteering.
And I think, to Neil's point, I sit on Neil's committee as well. And to his point, without those guidelines from the state, so much of this is still theoretical. And so to make those decisions of could you come back early? Well, you don't even know who you're bringing back yet. So it's a little chicken and egg. And so you try to make all these plans without having anything really concrete to plan around yet. So that's where we really need our partners at the state to give us something we can work with. That's my 2 cents.
Definitely interesting because I saw Massachusetts came out with some stuff, and if each state's different across the United States, how that affects SATs, everything else, it's a huge thing. So kudos to you. I'm trying to figure all this out.
All right, anybody else for Neil, or can we pivot to Aaron and hear about teaching and learning?
This is the first time I was ever allowed to go before Aaron Murray.
Oh. Well, that really is the part of this work is that I am on the heels of your work because the unknowns are making it so difficult in which to make decisions as we go forward. So my goal with you this evening is to really share with you the beginning work of our reopened Simsbury Public Schools Teaching and Learning team so that we can plan for what learning will look like for students in August. So with this team in place, we want to be ready and prepared as we return to focus on curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And most importantly is the social emotional well-being of our students and of our faculty. We want to be able to access our students and assess them in a way so we know how to provide support systems to them, both socially, emotionally, and academically. We want to design our curriculum instruction and assessment practices, our plans, our materials, our technology to be flexible in case we need to fully move into a distance learning model as well. We want to spend the right amount of time discussing, reviewing our feedback that we've received from teachers, from students, from families to make the best decisions we can as we move forward. And we want to, look at student learning and engagement to be at the highest level possible that we can do. And throughout all of this, we want to ensure that we're collaborating and communicating with all stakeholders involved. So I hope that through this presentation tonight, that the information of our work to date and as we move forward will give you a sense of where we're at, but clearly remembering that we're sort of coming behind this operations team to help guide without knowing what the model or models might be, make it difficult to talk in definitive ways at this point. So we'll move forward to the purpose of our committee, as I said, so we can, we want to outline the steps, the actions that need to be planned for the various models that Neil just talked about. Will we re-enter with some of our grade levels in school? Will there be a hybrid model? Will there be distance learning, full distance learning? So we don't know those, but we want to use the lessons that we've learned over the past few months as we were thrown into this situation so that we can improve the instruction that we deliver to students in Simsbury. And I'll tell you, we've gotten a wealth of information. The honesty and the feedback that has been provided by all of our stakeholders has been very informative. So we're clearly looking to address the learning gaps and planning ways in which we can emphasize support systems for students on a social emotional level. So we're obviously focused on the teaching and learning, but we also want to know where these kids are at this point, when they return, we want to reacclimate them to our schools so that they can receive the most appropriate and engaging instruction as possible. So we'll go to the next slide and look at the membership. In planning this committee, we opted to look at a 3-tier approach. We began in May. I began working with district administrators, talking about the work, trying to identify areas that we and approaches that we were looking to get better at and learn more about. So I've had 3 meetings with district administrators, and we have a tier 2 meeting next week with our department supervisors and other teacher leaders. We're also in the process of getting teacher leaders in our classroom teachers for tier 3 that are interested in dialoguing with this team to talk about their experiences. And so we'll be having a meeting following our meeting next week with the tier 3. So you can see on the list, we have separated the groups out. Betsy Gonzalez, obviously overseeing our K-6 program, but took our principals and divided them up. So Beth Hennessy is overseeing kindergarten, grades 1-2. Steve Madzik is focusing on grades 3 and 4, and Maggie Seidel 5 and 6. We also are asking Meg Evans to be the spokesperson and the contact with others in regard to K-6 interventions. So that you can see is in our tier 1 group. We then move on to the middle level where we have Scott Baker and Anjanette Belmonte, Mike Lazzetti. He's on, as you saw, on Neil's committee. Jacqueline Petrella is as well, and she's representing the social emotional learning aspect of our work. Moving on to the high school, obviously with the high school administration, and Sue, she's the connection. You can see these people have dual roles, but there's also such an emphasis on the social emotional mental health of our students that Sue and Nancy Forsberg will be participating with. And of course, we don't want to leave out technology. So Joncia Lightwinick and Jason Casey have been instrumental in working with us to oversee the technology. For each one of these levels, we're looking for parent representatives to participate in conversations as we move forward. So we're in the midst of identifying some parents to be part of this. At the same time, I've had a couple of meetings already with our Board of Ed Curriculum Committee, and I would like to continue those conversations to keep the board members on that committee up to speed on the work that we're doing as well. So that's the membership of our team, and you can see how it tiers from 1 to tier 2 to tier 3, and it becomes an extremely large group. So we're looking to define it more closely to the levels that we're looking at. So as we go forward, we're looking at a time frame for the 2021 school year. And this is the visual that we've been working from. Clearly, because our conversation started back in May, we wanted to say, what will summer look like? And Sue shared with you the ESY. We shared with you the work that's going on at the elementary level. Betsy Gonzalez is overseeing the elementary intervention and enrichment programs. And the high school is working with DCE for any of the high school courses that are going forward. But we certainly want to identify with that green box, the school entry, which really starts on August 26th until we're looking at September 25th. We see that as reacclimation, reacclimating kids, teachers, everyone back to school. But we also want to ensure that we have the learning. We've identified the curriculum, the instructional strategies, the assessment practices that we will use when we open school. So we're identifying each unit that we will begin at each grade level in the content areas and be prepared, fully prepared to do that work during that time. We then go into the fall for October and November, and that will bring us to the end of the first marking periods, relatively speaking, for the trimesters at the elementary and middle school and Q1 at Simsbury High School. It gets a little longer for the winter, December to March, and then spring. But what we're looking at is such undefined. And as Brian had mentioned earlier, if we get a spike, we've got to be ready. What we're calling it is to be able to grab and go. If we're given 24 to 48 hours, we have to be ready instructionally to be able to have the materials, students have the technology, what they need to take with them. So we're really planning full scale in school, hybrid, or out of school as we look at our curriculum and instruction. So as we plan for teaching and learning, it's really important for us, and these are the talking points that I've used with the committee, a variety of committees now that I've met with over time, but assessing that student impact. We want to know where kids stand social and emotionally and academically. We know there's going to be learning gaps, learning losses along the way, and we want to be ready and prepared to support students upon re-entry. We also, as I mentioned, want to plan for change. We want to be flexible because we're uncertain of what the time frame will look like. So we want to be ready and able to keep a continuous approach to student learning. It's important to ensure that we keep our teachers focused on what matters, and what we believe matters are relationships, instruction, feedback from our stakeholders so that we can continuously improve the work that we're doing. And certainly, again, we're focused on a solid curriculum, instruction, and assessment practices as we go forward. When we look at student engagement, we want to ensure we know students have spent the last 3 months in a distance learning environment, and they're moving from the grade level that they were in to the next grade level. And we want to make sure that they're going to be greeted with the units that they would receive as they enter that next grade level. But we also want to make sure that we're capturing those competencies and skills that are critical from the grade they left to be able to re-engage in some of that learning in that student entry period, in that August to September entry period, so that we can address those priority standards and knowledge and skills as we go forward to address those learning gaps along the way. And for all of this, it's about all students. We want to make sure that the proper supports are in place. We want to make sure that interventions are in place, special education support systems, so that when our students return, or even in a distance learning environment, they receive the kind of support that they need as we move into the fall of 2020. As we got together, we identified the goals of our work, and you can see how this is sort of coming all together, identifying those essential curriculum and immediate skills that students are going to need. As I've said, identify those initial units, learning targets that go along with them. We also have to talk about what the schedules will look like. Even if we come back with our students in, say, grades K through 6, we're not going to have 24 kids in a class. We're going to have probably 12 and 12. So we have to be thinking about the instructional practice of the teacher with those students and what that will look like. So obviously we're looking at the reading, the writing, the math, the science, the social studies, and how those contents will be delivered along with the specials areas of art, music, and PE with all of the restrictions. Obviously, through all of this, we want to provide that social emotional support. know that kids are where they are. It's safe, it's secure, they belong, that those relationships are being built by teachers and with their classmates. And again, continuing to identify any and address any recovery skills that are necessary. But you can see here that we've identified the work around teaching and learning and supported by organizing principles, and want to ensure that this is for all kids. So what we want to make sure we do very carefully as well is be able to communicate around the work at any point as we go forward, and especially if a change was to come in front of us during the fall. So these were the goals that we identified from a teaching and learning perspective. The questions that you see on the next slide are really, really supporting the notion around what are we going to do for curriculum instruction and assessment? And this is where it's been extremely powerful in my ability to collaborate with 12 other curriculum and instruction assistant superintendents and directors around the state, because we're all on the same page and wanting to ensure that we are providing the most engaging, high quality learning that we can, that will best serve our kids as they move forward. We know that we can't fix it immediately. We know it will take time, but we know with the proper planning, with the right design, that we will make a difference in the lives of kids. The second question, again, pointing to that social, emotional, and mental health, that we know that can get in the way, and everyone, whether it's a child, a young adult, an adult, has been affected by what's happening with the pandemic and the other issues faced in our nation right now. And we want to make sure that we continue to support students as we move forward. But the other piece that we don't want to forget are other resources, because we know that through this distance learning, the kind of teacher collaboration that has taken place has been outstanding. We don't want to lose that. We want to ensure that teachers continue to have the opportunity to collaborate and work collectively in order to meet the needs of their students in their grade levels or in their courses at the secondary level. We also want to make sure that we provide that opportunity for ongoing professional learning. We will continue to provide training and professional learning over the summertime. We will keep items on our district website, on the distance learning website, available to families and students as well, to continue to build skill. We're not collecting our technology until August 3rd, anything that has been loaned out. But we also, I think, as I've mentioned in a previous meeting, we are purchasing, and Neil just talked about it, more technology so that every student will have a device that they will have available in their classroom. And if need to do take home, they'll have it available to them to take home. So the technology is really, really critical. iPads for kindergarten and first grade, Chromebooks for 2nd through 6th grade. And in the end, there's always, and Neil certainly referenced it as well, when they're purchasing various equipment in which to address the need for cleanliness and cleaning, et cetera. We're seeing the same kind of thing in teaching and learning, that there will be some unexpected costs that will come along with this. We want to ensure that what we've learned and what we've heard and what we've researched is that we're using the most effective technology, the apps, the devices in which to keep learning ongoing and not interrupted along the way. But we also want to make sure that there's a balance amongst teaching of technology, kids in front of machines, and time with paper and pencil as well. So as we, go forward, we're constantly looking back at the various ways that we're collecting information. And hopefully you can see it's a very important process in planning for this reopening of school. As I said, we're so appreciative for the honest feedback that we've received from our families, our teachers, and our students all the way from 3rd grade through 12th grade, has really provided us ideas of what works and what doesn't work. And we know we need more face-to-face when we're in a distance learning model. We know we need more opportunities for teachers to be readily available to answer student questions. So there's things that we're learning, and these are not uncommon just to us, but they are, as I talk with my colleagues, very similar kinds of way to improve opportunities for learning for our students. The other piece that we want to pay close attention to is that we want to gather the right kind of data, and data that we can use to provide the support systems in place for students. We want to be informed in our decision making. We want to understand where kids are academically, and we want to know where they are socially and emotionally, so that we can put plans together, lessons together, and this is all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade. The integration of technology, we want to continue to provide professional learning. It's not going to stop just after we do it in the summertime. It's going to continue into the fall. We want to ensure that what we plan in regard to teaching and learning, it can happen in the classroom, or it could happen in distance learning if we get pushed out. Or if kids are out and they come back in, we want to make sure the learning is ongoing and not interrupted along the way. And reaching out for the professional development, making sure that we can make these opportunities available to all people when needed. So when we think about this, the bottom line is that we're working hard so that we can be resilient, we build relationships, that we have that ongoing learning for students, and that we are effectively communicating with all of our stakeholders as we move forward. Our wish is to get guidance and direction so that we can be clearer about what it will look like, what the models will be, and working with our teachers. So the other piece that I really didn't mention throughout this is not only do we need to reacclimate our students to the school, to the instruction, to the classroom, we got to get our teachers back and reacclimate them and get them back in the process of this work as well. So we have a lot of summertime work ahead of us. As I said, we have 2 more meetings before we depart, or before teachers depart for the summertime, but we will be bringing people in, small groups, large groups of people, to ensure that our curriculum, our instructional strategies, and our assessment plan is ready and able to go as we come back in August. So you can see where our meeting dates are, and ensure that not only will we include teachers, many teachers have come forward to say, I want to be part of this conversation, and many parents have as well. And I appreciate that, because we will be bringing representatives onto this committee to have conversations once we have more clarity as we move forward. So hopefully this has given you a broad overview of the work of the Teaching and Learning Committee, but we're ready to close school for this year, so to speak, so that we can get ready and eager to move forward in planning for the reopening of the 2021 school year.
All right, does anyone have questions for Erin?
I'm really happy to see the social emotional piece being listed right up with the curriculum. I mean, I think that that's really important, and I think that that really addresses all of our students. I think it's a big piece of it. I'm glad you're addressing it. Thank you very much. And thank you for all your work so far.
Thank you. And I think, and Sue has certainly been spearheading a lot of this work. And so often, so many people want, a program put right in their hands. And we're really working hard at building understanding and knowledge. If you think about it, one of the things that's so critically important about this work, and I talked with my colleagues about it, is that we need to also pay close attention to the vision of the graduate competencies, as well as social emotional competencies and skills. So it's a very important way in which to pull these together. I'm not saying that content's not important. It is absolutely, but we have to be focused on building competencies for students all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade. So Sue, I don't know if you want to comment as well.
I think the only other piece that I would add is the reminder that looking at social emotional learning and wedding it through our curriculum is a part of our strategic plan. And it was work that we weren't going to really be embarking on until year 3, 4, and 5. But this pandemic has spawned a greater urgency for that work for both staff and students. So we're looking forward to it. You know, it's not just a curriculum that you give and say, okay, go and do. There's some wonderful research. There's an organization called CASTLE, the Collaborative of Academic and Social Emotional Learning, that really define what are those competencies and how do you get at them. They have to be directly taught. They have to be practiced. They have to be embedded in the culture. So we're looking forward to that work as well in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have any comments, questions?
Actually, I have a quick question. I don't know, honestly, if it falls to you, Aaron, or Neil. It's probably somewhere in the middle. And if it's a premature question, by all means, to say that. But mine is more of a logistical question. If you go back in the fall to the schools or the hybrid model, if these kids will probably be socially distanced in the classrooms themselves, and this issue is probably more acute in the middle school and high school. But when they are moving they traditionally have been moving every class from room to room, right? You can throw out all the social distancing once they get out of that room and they're in the hallway, right? So do you envision them coming to that class and staying in that class and then the teachers moving, or how do you, okay.
So that is something that we've been talking about. Certainly Neil can talk about it as well. You know, when students enter the building, there's a whole entry process and you get to your location. So we're looking more at the adults moving between the two classrooms than the students moving. What we're also looking at the secondary level is rather, it's all of these items are on the table, but we do have to look at a schedule that is able to be used when you're in the building or out of the building. So there's going to be changes that we have to discuss, but Neil, you could speak a little bit more clearly about it, but there is definitely less movement in the hallways for students when they re-enter the buildings.
Yeah, and I think it's why logistically, you can make the imaginative leap to how you do this in elementary school. It's a much harder leap for people to make in terms of the way middle and high schools have been structured, which are with a traditional high school schedule. What I like to say to people, if you were going to create an experiment to spread a virus, you'd create a high school schedule where you put 25 kids in a room, spread them out, mix them with 25 other kids, then ring another bell and do it. So, I think we have to talk about potentially changing schedules. Maybe kids take fewer classes at any one time. I started talking to, maybe you say first half of the year, we're only going to do 4 classes. And when you go to school, you're going to get a much longer block of instruction. So the most interesting stuff I've read about this is sort of saying turn at least junior and senior year into more like what college looks like, where you go to school in class for a couple of hours a week and your other work is much more independent. So I think depending on the guidance we get, there could be pretty radical scheduling changes at a middle and high school level.
And I do think one of the things that Neil had mentioned is that I have been able to watch several webinars looking internationally at how kids have been returned to school and the ways in which they've managed their schedule, the way they've managed their curriculum. So it is a learning process for all of us, but it's great to get that kind of feedback. And certainly heard a lot about what Neil just mentioned, with your higher grade levels, 11 and 12, how will you approach that group? But until we know, a staggered approach or re-entry back into school, we hope, we keep saying in our meeting, when we get to that winter block, let's hope that we're all back in school and we're doing what we need to do, but we don't have that answer yet.
Yeah, thanks.
But Aaron, we also have the example of what happens, and I hate to say it, I'm a brick and mortar college person. I don't know if I could do online. But we also have the example of what's happening in online school, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you look at colleges and how learning is happening. And if we had to really go that route, I mean, I think in some ways, I don't know about the districts and how prepared they are, but at least our high school kids, with putting a teacher in a classroom and them coming to them, we thinking that we could, do that, not the little, not the elementary, but at least with the high school ones. But Neil, I had a question for you, this being my first year, and I know we've talked about, and this may be some of you, Aaron, but I think it's Neil because of its, bodies. When do we end up knowing how many kids may be coming into the district, that are from out of district? Because I know that we have the technology that we're ordering, our current kids have theirs. We've got some kids that are leaving and we'll get those back cleaned and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But, even in the midst of this, as much as people may talk about homeschooling and keeping the kids home, and, I've got to think that we would have some new kids that are not been here yet that may be raising their hand and reaching out and saying, I'm going to do, how do I, start to prepare? So.
Yeah, certainly on any summer, we have new registrations into the district. So far for the spring, it's been very slow. I think the real estate market is really slow. I don't anticipate a big influx of students by any stretch of the imagination, but we certainly have a few dozen every year. And I would expect that to some degree again, but right now, Laura Shulman, our enrollment coordinator, is not getting a whole lot of new registrations. We've pretty much chased down our kindergarten registration at this point, so we know what that looks like. And the numbers are not surprising. I would say that, I would characterize it that way.
And then question that one more and I'll be done. Last question is, I know we had talked about on the technology piece on increasing broadband. When do we know when that's gonna happen?
So all of that is in progress right now. I don't know when the switch is going to be flipped, but all of that is happening. I think, as we mentioned, we're providing on our district website. That's why we're not taking any technology tools back until August 3rd, because there'll be other learning opportunities that students can choose to participate in over the summertime. And Neil mentioned too, the technology team are looking at webcams, looking to see what we need, because that bandwidth, if we didn't up our bandwidth, we would not be able to do those webcams in the classroom. So all of that is in progress, and we've actually put some early commitments. Jason Casey has done a wonderful job ensuring, because the minute the order of Chromebooks or webcams go in, there's a million other orders for the same item. So we're doing well right now.
Okay. And then we'll be able to test it summer too. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
My only question, I was just laughing about the kindergarten thing because I was one of those people that was personally hounded for an answer about my child coming or not next year. So they were really, they want those numbers. And then I would say, there's no, just as a parent with other parents, knowing other parents are going to watch this, there's no hope still, or we're spending money as if there's no hope that in 2.5 months, the virus is down, everything is looking better, and that we don't start in the fall as a normal year. We're spending the money as if we think it's going to, or we're pretty sure we're going to.
I think we're pretty sure that we're going to open school in some format, some model. We know that if we can get kids, it's those kindergarten kids that we're talking about. We want to get them in August, and we want to get them, walking through the building, getting a little more familiar with it if we can. But it's going to be a different kind of year. At the same time, those little 4 and 5 year olds that we're bringing in, I've been talking to some high school teachers, and they're worried about bringing in new kids to their new courses. Like, I don't even know those kids. How am I? And, I said, oh, it's funny that you say that, because I am talking to people about the kindergartners and those first graders. So everybody's feeling the same way. How do we take those 6th graders and acclimate them to the middle school, and those 8th graders and acclimate them to the high school? So those are things that we're continuing to talk about, so that we can provide supports and opportunities for reaching out for those students. So in our eyes, and I think Neil could or Sue could talk about it, we believe school will begin in August. I think there will be some ways in which to reacclimate all kids to the buildings, but that's yet to be determined. Oh, you're on mute, Neil.
I would just briefly say, Jen, to add to it, of why I think it's unlikely to say, hey, we're going to come back to normal, is it's simply a capacity and square footage problem. Because I've already had my head custodians set up a classroom for me with kids 6 feet apart. Let me come in and see it. And you can't fit a typical number of students in a classroom like that. You can fit about 12. I'm really interested to see the guidance of, is it a limited number of students, or is it keeping kids 6 feet apart? Because if I can keep kids 6 feet apart and use my high school science labs, I can probably fit 20 something kids in a room. So it's an interesting, it's going to be interesting to see what exactly the guidance says. Right now, the summer school guidance says ratio of 1 adult to 10 kids. So we would need some relaxation of where it is for summer school to be able to open as normal.
And even less for students with special needs. It's a 1 to 7 ratio, including paraeducator support.
Yeah.
So we'd have to look at those ratios and see what adjustments there might be.
It's a lot to take in, and I've heard from a lot of people like you, Jen, how they would like us to just open the doors as we always have. And I think the reality of that is you prepare for the worst and hope for the best, like with any situation. And I think that's what our due diligence is here. And in the event that we are able to roll kids in sooner, I think we have to be prepared for what happens in November or December. This all hit after flu season, so we don't know what it could be like if it's now a confluence of flu and COVID. God only knows what we might face. So I think without guidance, it's really hard, and it's a lot of speculating, and we're doing our best. We can't really get any answers.
I just think it's the most popular thing that people ask all the time is, why don't we want the kids back at school, and how does the board feel about kids going back? And there's these protesters, we're shoulder to shoulder in thousands, and why can't kids are going to go to amusement parks, why can't they do school? And so I just wanted for the record to say that it really is a state decision, not a Matt Curtis decision.
Exactly. And you know, we can only do what our governor allows. We are a public in the state of Connecticut.
And Jen, I would also caution to say that, you know, even with all the protests, I think we should just give it a couple of weeks and see what's going to happen from that. You know what I mean? And then, you know, and just pray and hope that we can get through the summer calm and just prepare for the fall. But the other thing I would even throw out there though for the fall is, you know, if all is true as they've said, and by some way this comes back, the question is really going to be, is it the flu or is it the virus? You know, and that's going to be the back and forth, you know. So most folks will end up probably sending people saying test for the virus first, and then you get a flu shot after, you know. So I think we just have to wait and see. I had another question though, and I don't know if it's Erin or probably is Erin. So there was a survey that was sent out to the kids.
Yes.
When will we be able to see the results of that?
So we're pulling all of that together. We're going to be sharing that with principals, with their teachers. So we should have that very soon. So you can see, I just received a copy, a preliminary draft of it yesterday that we can get to you. And we were able to look at it by the district in grades 3 through 6. And then we were able to look at it at 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, and 6th grade. And, you know, some of the initial responses from kids is we want more time with our teachers and we want more time with our classmates. And so we're listening and we want to provide that. We want that to be the way.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else? Okay. I did, Amy, you're still with us. I apologize. I forgot you in communications. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to share with the board. If not, that's okay. And
sorry, I was on mute. I just have something super quick in the finance world. Since the school year is coming to a close, so is our fiscal year. And so we're starting the process of closing out our year end. And this week actually starts our preliminary audit week. So they're going through all of our internal controls and testing those, getting all of our updated banking information, things of that nature. And I let them know that you all were approving the purchasing policy for this evening. So we will not have the same finding for next year. That was it.
that's great. Thank you. And we are tracking all the COVID expenses, correct?
Yes.
District, right?
Yep.
So long as we have that.
Yeah, so we're tracking those and then we're going to submit through FEMA, and then the Board of Ed was actually notified that they are getting about $97,000, I believe it is. That's another application that we have to apply for, but up to $97,000, which we've exceeded to date. So I'll let you know how much.
That will help alleviate some of our COVID expenses, that 97. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
So Amy, I have a request though. I know that in the Board of Finance meeting, you provided them with detail on COVID expenses.
Mm-hmm.
You could also provide us with the same report, you know, through the summer. So I know that there's one that's out there now, and when you provide it, if you could provide it based on, you know, from the previous month. So as we go through the summer and we're going to be meeting, even if it's, you know, once a month, you know, I don't know how often you'll do it, but if we could get that detail, that would be great.
Sure, just the same format that I gave it to the Board of Finance?
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that would be helpful for us to be on the same page, seeing what they're seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. All right. We have no public audience again. So that brings us to future business. We'll be on Zoom on June 23rd. So look forward to seeing y'all then. And I need a motion to adjourn. Anybody?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
I know y'all like my company. I didn't think we could sit here all night. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you all very much and talk to y'all soon.
Thank you.
Good night.
You.
Good night.